Welcome to another episode of Henry's Library. I'm your host, Jackie Douge. Let's get started with today's adventure. Scientists Ask Questions. "You're it!" yells Henry as he runs away from Dog Bear to hide. Dog Bear closes his eyes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ready or not, here I come.
As Dog Bear scans the backyard to see where Henry is hiding, he sees his friends Beaty and Curry up in their tree. Dog Bear walks over to the tree to greet his friends. "Can I play?" asks Curry as he runs down the tree. He's so excited that he almost knocks Beaty out of her nest. "You must slow down," says Beaty. "I'm sorry," says Curry. He goes back up to the tree to help Beaty fix her nest. "Guys, come check this out," says Henry as he walks out of his hiding place behind the shed next to the fence. Curry and Beaty and Dog Bear join Henry. "I know where you were hiding," Curry said.
"Next time we will invite you to join us," says Dog Bear. "We can team up since you're so good at seeking."
This made Curry smile. He likes to hear his friends say nice things about him. Henry's friends looked over at Mr. Slink's yard.
"That's a big hole in the ground,"
Dog Bear said, pointing his paw to Mr. Slink's yard.
"That's bigger than a hole I've ever seen."
"It's obvious he's burying treasure," Curry said excitedly. He began dreaming about the possibility of finding tons of delicious acorns. "I think he's planting a tree," Henry said. "Those are both interesting guesses," Beaty said.
"How can we find out what the hole is for?"
asked Dog Bear. "The library, of course," says Beaty before flying off. "That's a great idea," Henry said. "Another question to be answered." After lunch, Henry's mother agreed to take Henry and his friends to the library. But before leaving, Henry checked to see if Mr. Slink was still at home. When he checked the backyard, he saw that Mr. Slink was asleep in his lawn chair. Henry knew Mr. Slink wouldn't mind if this time he and his friends went to the library, because it was important because they all needed to find out why Mr. Slink dug the hole. When they arrived at the library, they were greeted by Mrs. Simon. "How wonderful to see you all today," said Mrs. Simon, greeting Henry and his friends. "What questions are you answering today?" "We want to find out why Mr. Slink dug a huge hole in his backyard," says Henry. "Curry thinks the hole is for buried treasure, and I think the hole is for planting a tree." Interesting hypotheses," Mrs. Simon said. "That's a very good question," Mrs. Simon said. "A hypothesis is a guess or an idea that you have about a question you want to answer. So I guess we have two hypotheses," Henry said. "One, Curry thinks that the hole is for buried treasure, and I think that the hole is for a tree. Is that right?" "You're right," said Mrs. Simon. "I'll be right back. I think I can help you answer your question. I have the perfect book for you." While Mrs. Simon was away, Curry and Dog Bear took turns trying to pronounce the new word they'd learned. Mrs. Simon returned with a new book. "I think this book will help you find your answers." She placed the book on the table. This book is called Ada Twist Scientist by Andrea Beaty. Henry pulled out his grandmother's feather bookmark. "All right, everyone, let's get ready." He then waved the feather over the book. They found themselves inside the book. Henry, Dog Bear, Beaty, and Curry were amazed at how Ada asked questions to find answers and test her hypotheses. Henry learned from Ada how he could ask questions to test his hypotheses. After they learned all they could, Henry waved his feather bookmark and he and his friends waved goodbye. "How was your adventure?" Mrs. Simon asked. "It was awesome," Henry and his friends said. "Thank you for helping us." Henry was excited to show Mrs. Simon the part of the book that he really enjoyed. He read this section from the book. "She asked lots of questions. How could she resist? It's all in the heart of a young scientist." He paused and thought about what he just read. "That's just like me. I ask lots of questions. I'm a scientist just like Ada Twist." "I think so too," Mrs. Simon said. "It's always a pleasure to help you and your friends learn something new and to see the excitement that you have from reading books and getting the answers to your questions." "We'll see you next week," Henry said, excited to think that he was a scientist. Back home, Henry and his friends went back to the backyard to look over at the hole in Mr. Slink's yard. "We need to be like Ada, ask questions, research, and test our ideas," Henry said. "That's right," Beaty said. "What questions do you all have?" "Do you see a treasure chest?" Curry asked. "No, but I do see a shovel," Henry said, pointing to it on the ground next to the hole. What is a shovel used for? Henry asked. It's a tool for digging up dirt. My dad has one in the garage, Henry said. I have an idea, Bertie said. Let's go to the garage. They all went to the garage where they saw Dad's shovel hanging on the wall.
There's dirt on the shovel,
Dogbear said.
I wonder where your dad was digging. There's no holes in the yard.
Maybe that's another clue to help us answer our question, Curry said. Hey guys, Henry's dad said as he walked into the garage. What's going on? We're researching our ideas, then we test them, Henry said, just like scientists do.
What are you researching? Dad asked.
Why Mr. Slink dug a hole in his backyard, Henry said. If there's anything I can help you with, just let me know, Dad said. He then reached to take some tools and gloves down that were hanging on the garage wall next to the shovel.
What are you going to use those for? Dogbear asked.
Another question, Curry said. Henry's dad then asked them all to follow him. They followed Henry's dad to Mr. Slink's backyard. Hello, Henry and friends, Mr. Slink said.
Would you like some lemonade?
Yes, sir, Henry answered. While Mr. Slink was getting their lemonade, Henry noticed something near the hole that he hadn't seen earlier. His friend saw it too. Mr. Slink returned with glasses of lemonade for Henry and his dad. Are you going to plant that tree? Henry asked.
Yes, I am, said Mr. Slink. Your father was nice enough to help me dig this hole so I can plant this tree.
Oh, so that's why the hole is here, Henry said. I was right. Oh no, there's no buried treasure, Curry said, sounded disappointed.
I think you're both right, Mr. Slink said. I think planting trees is like burying a treasure. Trees are valuable to me. They bring joy.
Henry and Curry were both excited that they solved the mystery of the hole in the ground. Later that night, Henry quickly brushed his teeth so that he could have time to FaceTime with his grandmother. Hello, sweetie, Grandma said. What was today's adventure? Finding out why Mr. Slink dug a hole in his backyard, Henry said. Sounds fascinating. I can't wait to hear more, Grandma said. We also learned a new word, hypothesis, and met a new friend named Ada. And I learned that I'm a scientist. Henry then picked up the book Ada to a Scientist that Mrs. Simon recommended to him so that he could learn about asking questions to test hypotheses and learn about becoming a scientist. Ada sounds like a really nice friend, and she taught you so much. I can't wait to hear more. Henry then began to tell his grandmother about today's adventure. The section of the story read by the narrator is from Ada to a Scientist by Andrea Beaty and illustrated by David Roberts. Text copyright 2016 Andrea Beaty. Illustrations copyright 2016 David Roberts. Used by permission of Abram Books for Young Readers, an imprint of Harry and Abrams Inc., New York. All rights reserved. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Henry's Library. We hope you and your family enjoy this story and learn something new, and maybe an idea or two that you want to investigate and learn about by reading books. Join us next week for another adventure with Henry, Curry, Dogbear, and Bertie. Parents, please rate, review, subscribe, and share the podcast. And we'd love to hear what your kids are learning and like about the show. You can send us a message via email to hi@whatisblack.co. You can also go to our website, whatisblack.co/Henry's Library Podcast, to see the books mentioned in this episode and links to fun activities. We encourage you to read the books from the episode together as a family. Books mentioned in this episode can be found at your local library or bookstore. We love all bookstores and hope that you consider checking out your local independent bookstores to support them.